Devastated? Confused? Heartbroken? So many times in life we get thrown for a curve and don't know how to react.
I can tell you the first time I had sex, how was my marriage going to survive? It's over. I remember standing in front of the judge with my 3-week-old baby, looking at my ex. I saw the look on his face and it was complete rage.
Welcome to When Life Throws You a Curve and How to Make the Adjustment with your host, Katie Hamilton.
Hey everyone, welcome to When Life Throws You a Curve and How to Make the Adjustment. I'm Katie Hamilton. Thanks for joining me today. So if you joined me last time, I had just, rerun the clock about 20 years, but I was really, laying a foundation for the podcast. I wanted to do that, when it was still in its first year of production, because it's not something that I really was able to do in the beginning, because we had to make the adjustment and shift gears because of COVID. And I just felt like it was more relevant and important for me to bring you some of that content that I, talked about with what happens when, oh my gosh, we're like experiencing emergency, and what some of those crisis situations can look like and how to make the adjustment. And it was more practical for the time that we were in. And I know that we're not all totally out of the whole COVID thing, but I did want to just finish laying the foundation for the podcast within this first year. It was important for me. So we talked last time about just what does it look like when your plan goes to crap, and you have to think of you have to recognize, okay, what do I do with all of this? It doesn't look like how I planned. It doesn't feel like how I planned, and if you didn't get a chance to listen to that, I would encourage you to listen to it. But we're going to kind of pick back up with that concept because, from the time I had my daughter Julia until, after I had my daughter Sierra, is really when the Lord was laying the groundwork in my own life about things that I believed in, truths that became absolute truths for me, and how I formed those, and why it's important to have those questions answered for yourself, because as I said last time, at some point you're going to get served up a dose of something that you couldn't expect, and you have to know where you stand so that you don't get shaken to the point of just coming unglued, and regardless of what's happening around you or the hurricane that you find yourself in, that you can see Jesus through the eye of the storm and let him be your peace and your security and your anchor as you navigate those trials and those storms. So this week's going to be interesting a little bit in the sense that the last episode that I recorded, as far as that first year of marriage, and I pointed out last week, I'm going to point it out again, especially in this episode, especially in this specific episode, probably in contrast to every other episode I've recorded or will record this week and possibly next time, depending on how I do on the time. It may seem that I am intentionally pointing out my ex-husband's shortcomings, or where he failed, or where he didn't quote hit the mark. If it could be viewed like that I'm intentionally pointing out his shortcomings. I can assure you, I am not ever highlighting someone else's character flaws, or whatever you want to call them, ways that I feel like they may have failed me in those moments of time intentionally. I'm only even talking about them in the context to where I can share my personal experience, because I experienced the goodness of God in circumstances that may seem on the outside, looking in, that I'm just talking to talk. And the content may not be positively reflective of my ex-husband, but, I'm letting you know in advance. I always want him to be well and do well. And trust me when I say I don't ever look at somebody else's shortcomings or, flaws or whatever, because I have a mirror that I look into every day and I judge myself. And I know that I need God's grace and mercy more than any other human being on the planet. And I'm so grateful for that every day. And so it is like not in my realm to judge another person or to say even what I think about, the decisions that they're making in the context. And this is what we're going to talk about, of how does somebody else's decisions like affect me, and how did I start to form these. And I am going to talk about some of the experiences that I lived through that first year of marriage. In the last episode, as I said, was the last one that I talked about. It was a little bit rough with some things about my ex-husband, but trust me, a little bit rough. Now, I'm not here to just share about that. And, I've lived out 15 plus years, almost 20 years now, of content that I could pull from if that were my intention. It's never my intention to make someone else look bad, but it is my intention to share the things that I learned. And I learned the goodness of God through all of that, just absolute utter. The first year of my marriage, it was the worst. It was the absolute worst. And yet I found myself discovering the absolute best, most amazing love and person that is Jesus through all of that. So if you don't remember, if you do remember, we had left off with Josh's birthday. Okay, now I talked last time about our plan and, our game plan and things not going according to the plan. My first year of marriage went nothing like the plan. I was so excited to finally be married, and, I had Julia was 3 at the time that we got married, but we did date when she was only 18 months old. So she's always known him. And I mean, she's never not known him. He raised her until she was about 14. But I was very hopeful. I had made very bad decisions or poor decisions, just reacting and acting and living out of my own pain from things that had gone on when I was a kid. And I had, my daughter Julia, and that was such a life-changing situation, both literally and just, it just changed how I viewed everything, everything. And being a mom has just been such a gift, such a tremendous gift. And I'm so grateful that God has trusted me with raising 4 daughters, because I can tell you I was a handful growing up, and I would not have wanted to raise me. Whew, definitely not. But God has had mercy and grace in ways that you all have no idea. So getting into my marriage, and, shortly after I got married, just a month or 2 later, I found that I was pregnant with Sierra, and I was like, okay, well, that happened really fast. And, then I found out that Josh relapsed, and I was like, relapse? That means there has to be a drug problem. What, what? I'm sorry, what? And then I found out, which I've shared this before, 48 hours after I found out that he relapsed on crack, well, I'm sorry, what? I felt very strongly that I had heard from God for like the first time in my life. And now, I mean, this is like a massive 1-2 punch, maybe a 1-2-3 punch, because if you're thinking like, okay, you have there's a drug, what? Oh my gosh, you took my wedding rings and pawned them for drugs? Or, I'm so sorry, gave them to someone to hold? I was like, you mean like to have and to hold until death do you part kind of thing? Because that's what you're telling me. I mean, this is like earth shattering, coming on the heels of like me just finding out I was pregnant. And then, oh my gosh, hey, guess what, Josh? I heard from God, you're going to go back and play baseball again. Oh, but it's not going to be about baseball. It's going to be about the miracle that God performed in your life and in our lives, and we're going to share it with the world. I mean, I didn't even have a concept of how insane that sounded. I mean, it sounded crazy to every human being that would have heard that, but especially to Josh, who's literally, less than 48 hours removed from a crack relapse. And I know I keep using the hand quotes, but like for me, that's what it was. Like there was no, it was just not part of the equation. And so I had a hard time wrapping my mind around that. I actually still do, just because I remember how out of left field it was. Like it was so just, it was just so not in my realm of possibility. And the fact that happened, and then I hear from God about something else that seems also like not in the realm of possibility, because I've never seen Josh play baseball at this point. I don't know him as a drug addict, and now I'm hearing from God, which I felt very sure about. I didn't know that sometimes this is something that I've learned. Not everything we hear, we share. Like there's a great grace in keeping things, to ourselves and cherishing them in our hearts until the proper time when God releases us to share. I mean, Joseph in the Bible had a situation that got him into some trouble, and he is a kid and just starts telling all of his older brothers and that they're all going to bow down to him. He didn't know that got him thrown into a pit and put in prison. And, it was years before, him interpreting dreams and then sharing about them actually was the time and the place, because that's actually what got him out of prison. But, I wasn't thinking about Joseph. I was thinking, oh my God, I just heard from God. Like, stop the freaking presses. Guess what? You're going to go back and play baseball. Forget the fact that you just smoked crack. I can forget about it. I mean, I don't know anything about baseball, but it's got to be better than crack. So let's do it. Let's go. That's what I was expecting. Josh had very little reaction, which it was probably very much to his wisdom and credit to just not respond to me. He just kind of looked at me like, but he didn't say anything. He just, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter that he thought I had lost it. I was so fired up about what we were going to go do. And by we, I definitely thought like I would be on the sidelines while he spoke, because that was like, the thought of me speaking was just that was not going to happen. I mean, like I didn't even, that wasn't even in the equation of we. I mean, it was just going to be me supporting him, both in baseball and with speaking. And I would be the best cheerleader on the sidelines, but I would definitely not be speaking. Gosh, that was like the most, I'll have to tell you all that story of how desperate I got for God to heal him. And I will tell you that, but we're not there yet. So, okay, I'm thinking, okay, so we just did a 180 and now another seems like a 180, but looks like the future is back to being bright, and let's, proceed. And I'm glad the crack thing's over. I had no idea that I didn't know anything about addiction. I mean, I knew I didn't know anything, but I didn't know how little I knew. And, I said before the last, birthday episode, he kind of struggled, up and down until but I wasn't sure, I wasn't really, I was cautious. But at his birthday party, which was actually like a company-wide party for this real estate neighborhood I was selling, and my dad was developing the neighborhood. So the party was at his house. There was, hundreds of 200 people there, and, we're singing happy birthday, and Josh can't even stand up. You'll have to go back and listen to that episode. It was brutal, but, I ended up stopping my car on the highway and having him get out. And, that was the first day that I saw him be arrested. It was the first day that I saw him act very, very publicly in a way that I would have preferred him to not act publicly. I was, very embarrassed. Little did I know that was like not the least of my worries compared to what I experienced publicly and privately. I mean, that was like, I'm talking about like the tip of the iceberg. And, I had so much hope in, okay, well, maybe he's going to get it together when I have this baby. So from May until August, my hope had been continuously building in the sense that, okay, I think God's going to just use this baby to get him on track. But what I was hoping for and what I was like currently experiencing were, vastly different. I knew I wasn't experienced with addiction, but I also was not experienced with being a wife and having my plan, for this marriage, and my plan for like, okay, I just, I heard from God. So, that sounds better than this other thing that you just did. So like, when's all that going to happen? And, my expectation of me learning how to be a wife and what I thought was the role of a good husband, and when those two didn't line up, like, where did I find myself? Where did I find God? Where did I find, how did I reconcile all of those things? Because, early in my marriage, as part of my plan, I decided, okay, we're going to talk about this miracle that God performed in Josh's life. Okay, well then I'm going to be like the greatest wife. I'm going to just like make sure that I'm going to learn what it's like to be a good wife. And like, I remember going in the Bible and reading Proverbs 31, and oh my gosh, that chick, she's like legit the woman. I mean, I'm like, oh my word, like that's a tall order. Like, whoa. Okay. I'm like, okay, well, Lord, you're going to have to help me. Cause like, she's doing all this. I mean, she is like doing the thing. Okay. There's like no area that she falls short in. And, I'm working and I'm pregnant. Off and on, supposed to be on bed rest. Have this husband that I don't really know what exactly to do with, I mean, like I remember, okay, but like, I remember so vividly thinking, okay, well, I'm going to be, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. And then he's going to do what he's supposed to do. And then, it's going to be fine. It's just going to be fine. So as I'm like checking off these boxes, thinking like my performance is going to make a, huge difference, and I better make sure that I do what I'm supposed to do so that, all the boxes are checked and that, everything's good, so I can, it was like I was like trying to, my performance was very important, both to like me as far as like how Josh viewed me. I wanted my mother-in-law's approval very much. I wouldn't have said this at the time, but I'm sure I was seeking God's approval on some level, like whether I knew it or not, because I thought that it was very much going to be based in how I performed, as a wife. And, God was really teaching me, like, well, he, of course, out of his great love, like he meets us exactly where we are. And he loved the fact that I wanted to do this wife thing well. I really did. I really wanted to do it well. And I remember God saying to me, because I knew I had heard from him, Like, and I actually did. I mean, I really did. Now, I went on to question that for sure. But I remember it was probably like March or April in that first year of marriage, or maybe May or June or who knows when. But it was at some point where I had been let down by Josh. Like, I was expecting, something, whether it was for him to stay sober or who knows what. But I mean, I remember that feeling often. And I remember just like my heart had just felt like it was like, it was deferred. My hope was deferred, and it made my heart feel very sick. And I was doing the laundry, and I was like, why the hell am I doing the laundry and he is doing nothing, like nothing productive, except he's hurting me. He's like on drugs, drinking, I'm working, I'm like having our baby, I'm raising a child, like I'm taking care of our house. Why is it that I'm working and doing all this stuff and he's doing nothing? Like, how is this fair? So I remember saying that. I remember like doing the laundry, and I'm thinking like, he does not, I said this to God very, very clearly. I said, he does not deserve for me to do his laundry. He does not deserve that. And God said, well, Katie, you're right. He does not deserve that. Trust me, I'm not saying that doing laundry is the standard for the excellent wife. I'm not saying that. Just saying what I was going through while I'm having this conversation with the Lord when I was 23. And he said, well, I know you don't feel like you can do these things for Josh. It's not just the laundry. It's not just, vacuuming or going to work or, being pregnant or doing this marriage alone or taking care of your house or whatever it is, making dinner. There was this expectation about me and dinner that I found so fascinating, because I remember Josh asked me, early in our marriage, he was like, so what's for dinner? I was like, well, I don't know what sounds good. He was like, well, no, like, what are you making? I was like, what? Huh? I called my mother. I'm like, oh my God, he wants me to cook. I'm like, where was this when we were dating? And she was like, I don't know. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know how to cook. I mean, thankfully my mom gave me all her recipes and like walked me through that. And I spent that first year of marriage learning how to cook. I mean, like, I remember making all these adjustments to my life to try to make him happy. And, I wasn't seeing the return. I was not seeing the return, and I was like getting very frustrated. And I'm like, yeah, he does not deserve this, God. Like, what the heck? And he's like, Katie, I love that you care about doing this wife thing with excellence like that. And I actually did. And he said, he said, I know you Josh doesn't deserve that. You don't feel like he deserves it. He doesn't deserve it. He didn't say anything about me in this conversation necessarily. He just said, I know you can't do it for him in this moment. He said, but can you do it for me? And I was like, oh, yeah, I can do it for you, Lord. I was like, yeah, I can do it for you. And so I remember taking a black sock and putting it in the washing machine, and I was like, God, like, I'm doing this for you. But like, I actually lived out of that place of, every single thing I did for months upon months, I literally did it as an act of worship to God, because otherwise, I mean, I was going to have to do it either way. Okay. It's either going to get done or it's not. And if it was going to get done, it was going to get done by me. But instead of I'm sure I thought about that, but I didn't focus on that at all. I focused on just doing what I really already had to do, but doing it from a place of like worshiping God and honoring him. And yes, my husband got a blessing ultimately from those choices, but they really weren't for him. And for sure, he did such a work in my life and in my heart. So this whole deserving thing really, got me thinking, and like asking myself very hard questions about, what do I think Josh deserves? and what, why am I the authority? And and so then if I feel like he's missed the mark, then do I not have to do X, Y, or Z? And, if that's true, then, it led to much larger questions. And because I am very naturally geared towards justice, if justice is the right thing, okay, God is totally just, but he's also totally full of mercy and totally full of grace. And, I would love to just camp out right here and talk about these three things because, if he's just, well, then there has to be a payment for sin. Okay. That's justice. The scales are balanced. Okay. Well, like if we all fall short and fall short of the glory of God. If we all sin, we all need a savior. Well, there has to be a payment made for the sin. If he's just, well, he's also full of mercy and grace. Like he gave us something that we did not deserve, which is grace in Jesus. He also did not give us what we did deserve, which is hell. That's mercy in Jesus and through his death on the cross. So he satisfied all three of those things, the grace, justice, and mercy. Because, and so I'm thinking, okay, well, if I'm going to take God up on justice, then I also have to take him up on grace. I also have to take him up on mercy. And so I'm like, thinking all of these things out. And I kept coming back to the same question of, okay, but if someone else doesn't do what I think they're supposed to do, or let's just say even what the Bible says they're supposed to do, okay, does that mean that I don't do what I'm supposed to do? Well, of course not. I'm still going to be held accountable. Like when I die, I'm going to give an account for Katie. I will give an account of how I lived my life. Did I honor God with the talents and the resources that he put in me to serve him and to live my life during this time that he created me for? And how am I using my time? And, when you start thinking about, okay, well, that's not going to, someone else's behavior is never going to let me off the hook. Like, I'm still going to be responsible for me. I'm still going to give an account for what I did with my time and how I used it to honor him and how I served others. And, you fill in the blank, whatever he's called us to do. And I'm like learning these things during this first year of marriage, and my relationship with the Lord is growing exponentially. I mean, there was so much work done in my heart, totally separate from Josh during this first year of marriage. And, yet I'm not seeing us getting any closer to this thing that I felt like I heard God say when I heard him say, oh yeah, it's going to be about the miracle that he performed in your lives and Josh is going to go back and play baseball. Nothing lined up with that. In fact, if anything, we were getting farther and farther and farther from that. And, I'm being changed in this process and being refined, and, God's like really doing a work in me. But I'm thinking I must have missed it. I don't know, I'm thinking, okay, maybe we're just going to get to August and it's going to be the baby. That's what God's going to use to get Josh, his life together. Because I don't know if you have never experienced somebody with a crack addiction, I can assure you, I came at that thing from every angle you could ever imagine on this planet. If there was going to be a solution, I was going to find it, period. Like, end of discussion. I mean, I had the boy committed to a mental hospital. I tried giving him what he wanted, not giving him what he wanted, being nice, being mean, every single thing you could try. I tried it. And, the fact that I couldn't figure this out was very, very hard for me. I knew it was like out of my realm of understanding for sure. But you know, I mean, like I was going to figure it out. I had to figure it out because my life, in my mind, my life depended on him getting well. Like I have to figure this out. This is like what I'm supposed to do. This is what I thought. It's like, even though I knew it was, quote, not my responsibility to fix him, I was having to live in the aftermath of his choices, which I did not like. The fact that I was going to experience the fruit of his labor or the lack thereof. And I'm not talking about finances. I'm talking about I was living through very painful circumstances, and all of my failed attempts, you know, to get his attention, get him to, you know, stop doing, you're killing yourself. It bothered me so much because I felt like he had this life that he was literally destroying. And I cared more about his life than he cared about it. And I'm like, you know, if he had cancer or something that maybe he, you know, didn't have a choice in the matter, maybe it would be easier. It would be easier. Is what I, you know, was thinking. I was like, but he's like willfully killing himself. And I'm like, and I don't understand how I can care more about his life than he does. Like I wanted him to just stop. And if you've ever dealt with an addict, you know, in your infancy of learning about addiction, I'm sure you've said, just effing stop. Just stop. Like, all of this can go away if you just stop. Okay, but they don't stop. And I would find myself coming home, and I remember walking in the house. Every window in my entire house was taped up with black sheets and with this tape and then with foil, which I never really understood the foil thing. There would be copper, which I guess is what Josh used to, like, maybe cook crack or something to smoke it. I don't know. There was a copper element. There would be this copper everywhere. All of the vents in the house would be totally destroyed. I'd come home and the furniture would be sawed in half. My actual couches, my chairs, the cushions, cut in half with the foam everywhere. I mean, what I was seeing was like, oh my God, this is not getting better. This is getting so much worse. And not only is he destroying himself, he's destroying our house. He's destroying like our lives. Like, freaking forget baseball. I could give a crap. Like, I don't care if he ever talks about the miracle God performed in his life or not. Like, I evidently missed that. Like, totally missed it. I'm talking about, like, I don't think this man is going to survive himself. He's not going to live. He's not going to live. Oh, my word. I remember the first time he asked me, you know, he said to me, I owe somebody money, you know. And there was a man that Josh did AA with or whatever. I mean, yeah, in theory he did. He didn't actually really. But that man said, Katie, you know, he didn't owe that guy money. He just wanted more money to get more drugs. I was like, oh, my God, you're right. Hello. Like, I wouldn't have not thought that. I would never have thought that. So I was like, no. The answer is no. How about no? No. No. And I mean, oh my gosh, I fixed so many cars and windows and doors and that house and myself. There was just so much, you know, anger. And Joshua is a very strong person. Okay, but I was like, okay, well, you might be strong, buddy, but I am too. And I'm going to match your physical strength with my, like, whatever I thought it was, like my determination. And, you know, I mean, I was like really coming up empty at every single turn. You know, like the doctor for the mental hospital was like, oh, yeah, you know, your husband's on crack, but, you know, I can't keep him. I'm like, well, what do you mean you can't keep him? He's like, well, we can't keep a adult, you know, against their will. I'm like, how about he lost his will because he smoked crack? So he doesn't get a choice, you know? I mean, like, I'm thinking all of these things, you know, not like while I'm learning about addiction, while I'm also learning how to, be a wife, how to be a daughter of God, of like, a daughter of the King, and like live in that realm, which, none of it was like adding up to how could this ever work out? Like, how could it, it got to the point where it was like, okay, well, I at least have to, I'm going to have to like get this house fixed, because I'm going to have to sell it, because I'm like running all the numbers in my mind. I know how much money I'm bringing in. I know I'm about to have another child. I know what he is spending on drugs. And I mean, like, I'm like, I can't, keep getting new cards. He's like, wherever they were, I mean, he was going to get to them, and whatever was broken in the process did not matter to him. I'm like, and I'm going to have to get myself out of here, like ASAP, like right now. But it was like, I just was like trying to like hold out hope for the birth of our daughter. Like I had all of my eggs in that basket. And, he would have drug dealers call me. I took all the money out of our account, and I left him $1,000 because I didn't really know when I went to the bank. And I was like, just, I held it together. But I definitely, I would just like unleash on the Lord. And God can, he's so, like, I'm telling you, when I say he meets us where we are, there's been times where he's put me in check for sure with my mouth, but like in like those moments, he just loved me. Like I'm his daughter. Like he gave me every ounce of grace that I needed. And in the midst of my just in this madness and this crisis that I could have never seen coming, and it was certainly not what I signed up for, and it was not comfortable, and it was not part of my plan. I would feel the manifestation, like the presence, like the actual presence of God right there with me. And he got me to this place where it really didn't matter necessarily, like it, when I say like, when this became my reality, my life completely changed. The way that I thought changed, the way that I reacted changed, the way that I approached every single thing changed, because I knew that regardless of what happened with Joshua and, this plan that I had, whatever, if it all went to crap, if it all fell apart, if every single part of it fell apart, and I even was able to say this, like, knowing I was a mom, and there was like, a mother who loves her children very fiercely and very intensely, but I know that God loves my kids way more than I could ever love them. And when I finally got to a place where if it all went away, if every single thing that I had hoped, if none of that hoped for, if none of that happened, as long as I had one thing, which was Jesus, I had every single thing I would ever need to live a life of joy and peace. And I'm talking about a hope that was secure, that could not be shaken, that couldn't be swayed, that would never be altered or changed in any way, because that was my reality. When that became part of my belief system and my reality of like knowing who God is and who he is for me and that love that he has for me, I knew I would be fine. I knew I would be better than fine if I had Jesus, period. Come what may, I don't care. I did not care. And of course I cared, but I didn't care. It was like, if you don't fix any of this, if you don't fix any of it, as long as I have you, I'm going to be fine. I remembered I would come home and I would not know what's on the other side of the door waiting for me, whether it was my furniture, every broken thing. I mean, I'm talking about like everything in the house would be broken. Just all manner of stuff that I knew I was going to have to like find in me, both the financial resources and just the wherewithal to fix it. And then deal with this husband that I had that was just a disaster. I mean, oh my gosh, like bless his heart, like he was so just off the freaking rails. Okay, you have no idea. But it was like I would pull into my driveway, and I didn't know what would be facing me on the other side of that door when I went in the house, but I knew in that car I would remember the sacrifice that Jesus made for me on the cross. And he gave every single thing that he had. He gave his life so that I could be reconciled to God, and I could have that grace and that mercy and live in freedom and live in love and have my eternity secure. Nothing could change it. Nothing could change the sacrifice that Jesus paid for me, did for me, and made for me on the cross. And because of that gift that was his life, I always had a reason to worship God, period. Like, it didn't matter what I was going to see when I went on the other side of the door, when I went in the house. It didn't matter if, like, my heart was broken, or I was sad, or, my hope was deferred again and again and again and again and again and again and again, because I always had a reason to worship God, always. I mean, that there were truths that became my reality that would never change, and they've never changed. They will never change, because the fact of the matter is God's goodness outweighs every ounce of pain, every ounce of trauma, every ounce of whatever you could fill in the blank. His goodness outweighs all of it, because regardless of our circumstance right now, and I promise you, if you're going through something that's catastrophic, or that's very, very hard, or maybe not your plan, and it's very uncomfortable, God will meet you where you are, and he will help you navigate every part of it. He absolutely will. If you seek him, you will find him when you search for him with your whole heart. And in the process, he will show you his great and overwhelming love that is what is able to bring you joy. It's the reason that we worship. It's the reason that we have hope, regardless of our circumstance. It's because our hope is not in anything that we see. Faith is the substance of what we hope for. It's evidence of the things that we don't see. And if our faith is in the right place, which is in Christ, it is secure, it's solid. We're going to spend eternity in heaven with Jesus in glory, and I want to hear, well done, Katie. Well done. Like, girl, you did it. You took the Holy Spirit up on his ever-present help being in your time of trouble. You took him up on the offer that he would guide you into all truth. Like, he'll show you the way to go. And you did everything that I asked you to do. You used your time wisely. And you didn't let your circumstances dictate why, who you were. And you didn't let the enemy, who only comes to kill, steal, and destroy, steal your worship, or steal your joy, or keep you, or throw you off course. Like, I mean, trust me, I definitely don't get it right at all. I mean, I don't get it right 90% of the time. I'm like making adjustments and, asking forgiveness, because, like, hello, we sin in thought, word, or action. Like, I mean, if I've thought it, I've done it. Okay, so that's like all day long. I'm like, okay, I'm like making these adjustments so that I can, walk in the divine nature and, live out my identity as God's daughter, and, do all the things that he's called me to do. But it's a constant There's constant adjustments that need to be made, and I am very well aware of my sin, my desperate need for a Savior. But I will leave you with this as hopeful, because regardless of what you're going through, Jesus is not surprised by it. You know, God knows what you're going through, and he does want you to call out to him. He loves when we ask him for help. When I'm like, okay, I can't do this without you, and if you don't go with me, I'm not going. You know, like that actually makes him happy. He loves to be in relationship with us. He loves to meet our needs. He loves to have us recognize that we need him. You know, he's very, very honored by that. And, you know, he's such a good dad. He's the only perfect parent out there. He's the only one that's never, ever going to leave you, never going to fail you. Has seen all of your flaws, all of them, has seen every sin you've ever committed and anything you're ever going to commit, and said, yeah, I still want that one. In fact, I want that one so much, I'm going to send my son to die for her because I love her so much. I mean, he did that for all of humanity, and all we have to do is say yes to him. I mean, that's like a pretty great exchange. I mean, I'm going to take that every day of the week. And we're going to dive back into this territory of the first year of my marriage on the next episode, and ongoing until I wrap it up. But I am very grateful for the love of Jesus and the goodness of God, and I have experienced his goodness in the land of the living, and I'm going to continue experiencing it because goodness is who he is. I really appreciate you guys joining me today, and I will see you next time on When Life Throws You a Curve and How to Make the Adjustment. Come find me on social media, on Instagram and Twitter at Katie Hamilton 32, on Facebook at Katie Hamilton and at When Life Throws You a Curve 32, and on YouTube at Katie Hamilton.
The content provided here was supplied by a third party for display on our platform. The content is not owned or created by Real News PR.